welcome to Scorched Earth and a general reading for the sign of Gemini, Sun, Moon or Ascendant for the month of August 2023. I hope you are well. It will come as a surprise to no one that I'm using the Night Sun Tarot for you today. It has come out for every single one of the personal readings that I have done in this last two and a half week period, and I think it's come out for all the monthlies as well, certainly the last ones that I've done. I can't remember what came out in the first ones, if I'm totally honest. If the reading resonates with you and you would like to go a little bit deeper, there will be an extended at the, that you can access at the end. That will be the first link in the description box. The second link in the description box is to my private community, the Order of the Phoenix, over on the Circle platform. You can get access to all of the extended content for no extra cost. There are free classes and workshops running over there, and you get to hang out with a really extraordinary group of people. So if that sounds of interest to you, you know what to do. So Gemini, let's have a look and see what's going on with you. Can I have 3 cards for Gemini, please? There we go. We've got the 9 of Wands in your recent past. Let's put that so you can see what's going on. Current energy, please, for Gemini. We have 2. We have the Knight of Swords, there you are, and the 8 of Pentacles. And what about what's coming towards Gemini? Oh, a little hop there. We've got the 5 of Wands, right? Don't be too concerned about this, because you do have the Chariot card at the bottom of the deck. I feel like this 5 of Wands is actually a really healthy thing for you. Let me put these straight so you can see what's going down. Because it feels like the last bit of struggle before you work out what it is that you actually want to do with yourself here, right? The Chariot is a card of determination and victory, success, but it comes from knowing where it is that you're actually going, or certainly the direction that you want to travel in. This 5 of Wands feels like it's this way, it's this. And at that point you pop through to the 6 of Wands, but I mean, we'll get into it. There's obviously going to be a little bit more to it than that. Interesting. We're going to go with the Triple Goddess to clarify. This hasn't been out for a bit. Let's give it a little waft as well. There we go. So, tell me about this 9 of Wands, please, for Gemini. We've got the Fool in reverse. We've got the 10 of Wands, and we've got the King of Pentacles. Tell me about these 2 cards, Knight of Swords and the 8 of... Oh, there you are again, Gemini, double Gemini. Holy shit, it's the Lover's card. And the 8 of Pentacles. We've got the Queen of Wands and we've got Strength. So, Aries and Leo respectively. And what about this here? 5 of Wands, 9 of Swords in reverse, and the Ace of Pentacles. Like, I'm going to take that to be exactly what I fucking said. Anyway, we have the Queen of Cups at the bottom of the deck, and there's this interesting Cancerian energy underpinning the reading here for you. Queen of Cups is Cancer. The Chariot card is Cancer. They speak to different aspects of the Cancerian experience, for sure. The Queen of Cups is about receptivity, and I would actually read those 2 cards together to be questioning about what it is that you choose to accept. You know, I did say that it's about finding your route forward, and absolutely that the month of August is all about that for you. But first, you need to know what is important to you. What is it that holds value for you, emotionally speaking? Because I think that's going to be your guiding light this month. But we'll get to that. Anyway, we start off with this 9 of Wands over here. Now that is Moon in Sagittarius. It speaks to, well, it can speak to lots of things actually. The Moon in Sagittarius aspect of it always makes me think about the personal philosophy, you know, the personal philosophy that one lives by, and perhaps the one that one creates for oneself. But we've also got the implication of boundaries and the importance of setting them, and setting them in a way that is actually quite flexible. I think the biggest mistake that people make when they start to erect boundaries and institute them in any way whatsoever is that they assume that one size fits all, and it absolutely doesn't. You know, the boundaries need to be shifted around depending on who you're dealing with. What else? Well, I was thinking that erecting them is enough, I guess. They have to be maintained. I mean, a boundary is worth nothing if it doesn't hold up when something runs up against it, right? So I think there's been some personal struggle. You know, the other meaning that we attribute to the Nine of Wands is resilience. And the increasing resilience that is coming from, you know, your entertaining of the idea of boundaries and your increasing proficiency in being able to utilise them, but also how this is coming together to create a personal philosophy for you, actually. And it's the emphasis on the personal that I think that is so important. It could well be, and it will be the case for most people, that if you live in a society, there are certain societal expectations and rules that you are required to follow, right? And that you're required to live up to. But that does not and should not cover every aspect of your experience. Like, there should be something that is inherently you, that is speaking to personal philosophy, personal personal... Well, your personal value system. I've completely forgotten the word that I was going for, but your personal value system. What is it that marks you out? Not necessarily as individual and unique, because we don't have to pursue that in any way whatsoever. You know, we're talking about living authentically. And so to that extent, you know, whatever not to be ruled by state, which is, you know, vanishingly few things, nevertheless, leaves a certain amount of space for autonomy and correspondingly the authenticity that goes with it. But first you have to work out what it is that is important to you. What do you stand for? What will you not stand for? What will you accept? What will you don't? But if we come back to these cards here, we notice that the Fool is in reverse. And that means that the new start that you're hoping for yourself hasn't actually quite played out the way that it needs to yet. You know, we talk about the Fool in terms of a whole new cycle, initiating as it does the Fool's journey through the major arcana. It runs from 0 through to 21. 21? Yes, 21. Cool, I had a total brain fart there. It's not like I do this for a job or anything. Fucking hell. And it's not to say that you're doing anything wrong, Gemini, at all. I think what is missing from the equation is your faith in yourself to actually find this, to find something of meaning in here for you. Now, there may be many things in your life that give you meaning, many things to which you ascribe meaning and value, but they're not quite as integrated into you yet as they need to be for you to start on this whole new cycle, to travel in a direction. There's something just a little bit off. And it doesn't mean that it's not coming. It doesn't mean that your new start's not coming. It just means that it is a little bit delayed while it's waiting for you to develop the faith and trust in yourself that you need to. I mean, we go from the 9 of Wands here directly to the 10. The 10 talks about burden. It talks about things being actually pretty hard. And what I really do love about the Triple Goddess deck, and it's so fucking sensible, frankly, is the fact that in here, it's the only deck I've got where the person depicted in the 10 of Wands is actually putting the burden down. You know, it's kind of looking around and going, do you know what? It's actually okay for me to take a rest. And I wonder if you've been so furiously trying to process things, Gemini, in that way that you do with your restless mind, that you've actually made it, you've realised you've made it hard for yourself. It's like everyone's been seized by the energy of the North Node, right? It was certainly my For You page on YouTube is literally full of people talking about this. And there's something of that kind of energy about Aries, about the North Node, actually, not Aries, that is kind of obsession and a little bit insatiable. Now, because we're dealing with your recent past here, I mean, I think that's just kind of shades of that coming in. And, you know, the Aries energy that we see popping up here might actually be the thing that has broken it for you. But whether this is a realization that you've been kind of overdoing it recently, in the thinking department or in the doing department, I mean, ones generally speaking are doing, but what we're not seeing here is the Ten of Swords, suggesting that, you know, you've kind of reached a point where you've topped out and it's like mental exhaustion, I can't go any further. Or whether you've just been trying to inch your way towards this new start that is very, very close. It is close. I mean, the Fool reversed is simply just delayed new start. It is not an absence of the possibility of a new start. It feels like a regrouping is necessary. And I do think this is because your personal philosophy, your core values, what it is that you live by, the way that you erect boundaries and whether or not you maintain them, it's all just kind of crept up your chest a little bit here, and everything's a little bit tight to do with that. And I honestly think that, you know, whatever end goal you've got, because there is one, even if it is fairly indistinct at this point, you've realised you can just sort of relax about it a little bit. Like, I'm kind of struck by the fact that the King of Pentacles is Taurus, and obviously the nodes have just moved from Taurus into Aries. And then we've got this card that talks about completion and endings in that Ten of Wands, albeit that she has put the burden down. Like, the discomfort has just become so much that it's like, actually, we can put this down. I wonder if there's been something kind of triggering for you about the slow-moving energy of Taurus. That would not surprise me in the slightest. You know, you're a fastest sign on the fastest suit in the tarot, and the Knight of Wands, the Knight of Swords, is an order of magnitude faster than all of the other knights put together, I think, personally. And I think maybe there's been a recognition that you don't need to hurry towards the end goal, or hurry towards the new start even. There's something here about actually just allowing it to happen in the way that it needs to, because you're tired, Gemini. There's been a bit of funky energy going around in this last week or so. I've seen it in a lot of my personal clients, and I've experienced it as well. I've felt it pretty hard. And I think, although you've been doing your best on all fronts, maybe the thing that you have not been doing so much of is actually just giving yourself a bit of space to breathe in the middle of it. It doesn't have to be go, go, go all the time. Like, the North Node can kind of be a little bit obsessional, a little bit insatiable. Particularly in the beginning, and also in the end, where it's just that little final hurrah at you, and you're like, ugh. And I think if you're taking anything on board from the Taurus energy, even though it's been slow and that probably hasn't suited you, is that it is actually important to take care of yourself. It is actually important to take care, and take time to sit by the fire every now and again and just, warm your feet. I think this is about kind of orienting yourself. Because I was feeling the energy of the nodal shift for a good week or so before it actually happened. There's always that kind of building in any kind of transit that has the planets moving signs, or has the nodes changing signs, or anything like that. And I think you're just not quite as willing as you were before to push it beyond what is necessary. Kind of realizing that we're kind of topping out on what your energy levels are, and maybe it is better to retire, to rest for just a while, And I think for you that would represent actually quite a bit of growth. Not because there's anything wrong with you doing things fast. It's because you are, as a sign, predisposed to burnout. It's because there's just so much furious mental energy going on all of the time. I think you're getting better at recognising when that's happening and going, do you know what, I'm actually going to put these ones down for a bit. I'm going to have a rest. Maybe pull out my tin, roll myself a tab. That's what I would do if I needed a rest. And give yourself the space to just be for a little bit. Now, when we move to your current energy here, there you are, Knight of Swords, with the Eight of Pentacles. Now, perhaps this is a resurgence of energy, because in the current energy right now, the nodes have actually shifted, and we've got the the Queen of Wands there, speaking to that. And it could well be a resurgence of energy towards the goal, but I feel like it's subtly different to how it was before. There's a willingness to invest yourself, there's a willingness to work hard, and there you are, like you are working hard. Maybe you are working hard on you, possibly. But we've got that Gemini energy there of the Lovers, which speaks to the exercise of free will, but it also speaks to manifestation. And I think maybe what you've had here is just a little bit of a breather, so you can regroup. Like, what is it that I'm actually working for? What is it that I want to achieve? What is it that I'm feeling driven to achieve here? And how can I use this to grow, rather than kind of leaning into this insatiable energy of needing to know more things? Whether it is knowing self, or knowing about a situation, or even just knowing what it is that you're capable of. And I think the interesting thing about that from my perspective is the fact that the growth seems to come here in your willingness to regroup. In your willingness to take a break, step back, have a breather, and then come back to it and go, is this still important? Is this still something that I want to commit to? For some of you it might be a relationship, because we've got the Lovers card there, we've got the Eight of Pentacles. There is investment there. But there's also union and harmony and all those kind of things too. For some of you, you might be looking to bring some harmony to a relationship that's been a little bit fractured, whatever kind of relationship that is, romantic or otherwise. Maybe it's even with an Aries, actually. But what really strikes me is this difference in approach to the way that you would usually do things, which is to think furiously about it, to look for more data to give you what you need to make a decision about something. And instead go, no, actually it's okay for me to step back for a second. I just reorient myself, get my bearings. Because if you invest in something, Gemini, like you really, really want to invest in it properly. And whether it's the possibility of burnout or the possibility of the possibility that you might not actually be seeing things the way that they are. Whatever it is, it seems to have slowed you down just enough to take a quick pit stop and reassess. Now, obviously, you're always going to move a little faster than the rest of the signs anyway, so it certainly wouldn't be like a Taurus level pit stop or something like that. But it really does indicate, that was the Ten of Wands, by the way, that just turned around there in the deck. It didn't jump out, but it indicates quite a marked change in the way that you approach any given situation. Maybe, actually approach the situation of healing something, healing a relationship, putting something back together that's been kind of a little bit scattered. We've got the Hanged Man in reverse. That's Pisces energy there. Let's get one more. And the Hanged Man in reverse is about, like, fucking hell. It is about taking a step back. It is about hanging yourself upside down for a second to see something from a different perspective. And there it is, joined by your king, the King of Swords. Now, the King of Swords is interested in making decisions. That's what he does. But where the Knight of Swords might rush in to make a decision about something and then move on, you know, there's something here that's important enough that you're taking a step back and you've hung yourself upside down and gone, am I looking at this the right way? Is there something else to see about this situation that I have not perceived up until this point? And I think that you've done that. And now with that Hanged Man in reverse, you've realised that, you know, you've spent enough time on this now that you've actually come to what feels like a very measured, reasonable and rational solution to the problem. One more card. I wanted one, I got two. We have the Strength card. And then here we've got the Two of Wands. I mean, yeah. A Knight of Cups at the bottom there. Like, that's more Pisces energy. There's a lot of water here, actually, which is interesting for you, Gemini. It's not your element, obviously. But swords are very active, right? It's a masculine suit, whereas water is very receptive. And perhaps it is this dynamic between the acceptance and the action. You know, what do you accept? What will you not? What do you want to do? What do you not want to do? It seems like you've spent time sitting with your feelings and actually making sense of them. The feelings that you have, rather than the more data that you would have, you know, in a previous situation thought you needed to acquire before you could make this decision. Because this is a very positive decision-making card. This here is more the need to make a decision rather than the decision itself. It's the point of pondering. As you can see there, he's kind of like, oh, what's over that way? What's over that way? That's the looking for more data kind of thing. But it showed up in the reverse for you. Which means that you haven't been looking outside of yourself at all. You've actually been looking inward. And maybe you've been flipping it around and seeing it from other people's perspectives. But with Strength there twice. I mean, we could be talking about Venus retrograde in Leo, actually. That could be the thing that's kind of sparked this off for you a little bit. And that would certainly deal with things that are of value to you, things that are precious to you. Whether or not it is the weighing up and assessing of whether those things are actually valuable to you, or whether it's a recognition of the fact that something is valuable to you and you want to, wherever possible, retain it within your space emotionally. And now you're willing to do something to invest into it that perhaps you might not have been before. You know, there's a heavy peacemaker energy about this, Gemini. It's kind of like a willingness to put certain things to the side. Maybe in recognition of the fact that maybe you might have been overthinking a little bit. Which is okay. I mean, we all do that. Maybe somebody has transgressed a boundary for you, and maybe it's taken a little bit of time for you to step back and have a look and see if that was in the right place in the first place, or whether it should have been a little bit further out or a little bit further in. It's this willingness to sit with yourself, which is so much retrograde energy right there. Anyway, with Saturn's in retrograde, I can't remember when all of the others go retrograde, but I know that we're going to end up with like 7 planets all appearing to go backwards. And that is having us reflect on all manner of different things that we have been experiencing to see if we've done them right, to see if they are actually closed out properly. Do we need to dot the I's and cross the T's? Do we actually go back fully and rewrite the thing? Because there seems to be a willingness to communicate here. Now, when we move into August, we have the Five of Wands, and initially I was a little bit like, well, actually, that's a complete lie. I wasn't really. It felt to me a little bit like it was the toing and froing, the kind of feeling pulled one way or another, and needing to sit with, as I said, what you're going to accept and what you don't. We got two members of the court hierarchy here of the suit of water. Knight of Cups, Pisces, Queen of Cups, Cancer. And it's like, it does feel like part of what you're considering here is whether you have been a little bit closed emotionally with regard to a situation. Now, if you have been, the likelihood is that this is because it's triggered you somewhere. And whilst you could blame the person who is in front of you, the person who did the triggering for it, actually the reality of the situation is it exists within you somewhere deeper, right? This is something a little bit more aged. It has a quality of the historic to it. And I think in the recognition of the fact that maybe you might have been triggered by something that may not have been meant by that, like that. Or even if it was meant like that, that maybe there was a positive intent that was sitting at the heart of it. You know, we're always bashing on about, when it comes to the shadow, you know, recognizing that negative energy has a positive intent. And its intent usually is to protect us. So if somebody's poked you in the shadow recently, which always stings, it's never a fun experience. Rather than being reactionary about it, it seems to me like you really are assessing that you're doing the right thing. Now, like I said, there's an energy of the peacemaker about this, and there's certainly a desire for union and harmony, but maybe in that, where the growth is for you is the recognition that a situation has changed. You know, you are not necessarily occupying the same role that you were before, and neither is this person. But whether that means that the inherent value of this relationship and the inherent value of this other person to you is so fundamentally changed that you would choose to walk away from it, it feels like that's the thing that you're wrestling with here. Because the Five of Wands can be a conflict, right? And I most often refer to it as an internal conflict. But it can be an external one too. You know, wherever we have a card that is represented by the number 5 in the minor arcana, we've got some kind of instability, like changes in the air. And perhaps the thing that is representing the most growth for you is not the fact that things are changing, but accepting the change. Accepting the redefinition of what it is that holds value, and perhaps the value that you hold to somebody else and vice versa. And recognizing that it isn't necessarily your job to be peacemaker here. More to just accept the fact that things have changed. You know, we've got the 9 of Swords at the bottom of, underneath the 5 of Wands there. And the 9 of Swords is about perspective. You know, it can talk about overthinking and worry and concern and anxiety and all of those other things that we talk about. But ultimately, it's about perspective. Where the 9 of Swords in the upright is we have lost perspective somewhere. We've allowed ourselves to be consumed by our own personal demons to the extent that it's keeping us awake at night, or casting a kind of macabre aspect over what we're looking at. The 9 of Swords is more the 9 of Swords is more an understanding that the loss of perspective has been a temporary one, and that we're now seeing things for the way that they are. I mean, the Ace of Pentacles is a really beautiful card of investment, It's a new point of attention. So, wherever attention goes, your energy flows. And I think what you've been wrestling with a lot is how much energy to allow to go in this particular direction. I don't see you cutting anything off. I actually see you in a state of contemplation about you and what you think and the actions that you take. But there is some instability here. And the thing to note about this instability is that it doesn't, what would be represented by the Six of Wands here isn't necessarily just this situation gets sorted out and it goes back to how it was before. More, it is, I recognise that things have changed and I allow them. I accept them to change. I accept my role changing. I accept their role changing. And I actually bear no ill will about it. Because I think if you can notice the positive intent, it's very difficult to hold that more kind of warlike position that we might have had before. Often said, I've said it a billion times on this channel actually, one of the most interesting things for me was realising that we judge ourselves by our intentions and everybody else by their behaviour. And so, in some ways, in a way that allows us to continue being the hero in our own story, because we can always see those positive intentions, it doesn't matter quite how fucked something appears. Whether it's our behaviour or some sort of outcome, we can go, but I didn't mean to, I was trying to do this good thing, right? And there is some kind of absolution that occurs in that situation. For us personally, at least perceived by us, if not other people. But when it comes to the actions of other people, sometimes we absolutely blind ourselves to the intent behind it. Somebody says something and it's kind of clumsy and it pokes at your shadow and it pokes at a wound that you have, and you're like, well, fuck, why would you even do that? Why would you even say that? Why would you even think that? And we become fixated on the behaviour that hurt us rather than the intention that sat behind it. Now, some situations, it's a perfectly legitimate way of seeing it, but not every situation. And I think what you're exhibiting here is the discernment, right? The willing to reflect and discern and be open to judging everything on its merits. And those merits are going to involve what relative value they had to you before. One would assume it's probably higher than most because you've been wounded by it. The words of strangers very rarely make any kind of difference to us at all on a really deep level. Although I have to say that isn't entirely true, because I do read my comment section sometimes and I do put my head in my hands and go, what the fuck? I'm thinking about some very specific fucking comments recently. It's like there is no other fucking response but what the fuck, and then I go, why am I even reading these comments? And I just put them down and go and do something else. Anyway, a really valuable exercise that I started doing a long time ago was having a little flip around of what I said before. So instead of judging myself by my intentions, I start looking at my behaviour and only my behaviour. I don't allow the intention to colour what it is that I'm seeing. And I start looking for the intentions of the people who acted in a way that hurt me. And I'd love to say for the most part, I've, found everyone to be simply misunderstood, but that isn't actually true at all. But I found it more useful for me as a as a reflection on how it is that I show up in the world. 9.8% of the time, I'm kind of right about both the intent and the behaviour of the people that hurt me. But flipping it around showed me where I knee-jerked on stuff, right? Where I was reactionary rather than responsive. And more than that, it gave me a route into whatever shadowy shit my shadow is up to at this point in time. Because it's never really gone. You're in a dynamic relationship with your shadow all of the time. And even when things are going well and things are feeling good, that the shadow is still there. I mean, it's looking for a state of permanent integration into you. But it's always the flip side of who you are. It is the dark horse to the white horse. You know? And I think it takes quite a lot to be able to look at it and go, well, despite how good my intentions were, I can see how these behaviours might have looked to somebody who was not at this point paying attention to my intentions. And I can modify my behaviour accordingly. For other people, and look at their behaviours and go, well, they're obviously struggling, there's obviously this, there's obviously that, and they were just trying to help, but that was a really ham-fisted way of going about it. And you kind of sigh and deflate a little and go, well, that's actually kind of taken the wind out of my sails just a little bit. You know, this is a person who is clumsy. Perhaps this is a person who hasn't really done their own work, but is lecturing me on mine. You know, there are lots of different ways that this can play out. But you don't feel to me like you're worrying about it. Five of Wands and the Nine of Swords, if both of them were in the upright, would be a much more depressive kind of energy to it. Instead, this seems to be like an acknowledgement of the way that things are unsettled, and looking for a way to attend to that isn't taking it back to the way it was before. You're actually not looking to fix this in the way that it is. It's more like fixing the way that you think about it, or fixing your response to it. Because it could be somebody that you've fallen out with that you actually never want to speak to again. But for your own sanity, you need to find a way to be able to forgive what has occurred here, whether it was the transgression of a boundary or whatever. Because we don't forgive for other people, we forgive for ourselves so that we can release it and we can move on. And everything that I'm seeing here actually does feel like it is speaking to releasing and moving on. And whether there's some sort of way that you can restore an element of civility, that's possible. But it actually comes down to whether it's providing something that brings you value. Now, Venus is in retrograde for fucking ages. I can't remember if it's the September or October the 4th or the 14th or something like that. I can't fucking retain this information. There's too much going on in my head at any one point. But certainly it's in a period... it's in retrograde for a period of months. And whatever this situation is that you're dealing with here, like, I actually don't think that whether this situation is fixed or not, whether, you know, there's a return to civility or not, is actually the important thing that is going on here. It's the growth that we see in your willingness to sit with the other side of it. Your actions, their intentions. You know, poking it and prodding it. What's that? What's this? What's that? But it all feels very internal. You feel to me like you've been kind of stressed out for quite a while. And that you've been desperately wanting to move on for quite a while. And it's just not been happening the way that you wanted to. And it seems like, you know, you just had this little stroke of genius. Like, maybe there's a deeper issue here. Maybe this is something that I have to sit with for my own personal growth, and you've been willing to do it. You've been willing to put in the work. And maybe realizing what it is that you're struggling against, maybe the thing that it is that has triggered you is just simply the change. Once the change occurs, it's all stations I'll go. Is that even a phrase? Or did I mean battle stations? Oh, it's actually quite late here. I tell because I'm kind of tripping over my words. Either way, what I mean is you get a green light forward. And I think that you're doing all of this naturally, you're doing this holistically, but there's a reason why this particular change is one that you're struggling with more than most, more than you usually would. Like, you're a mutable sign, right? So you're kind of used to that flexibility and the maneuverability. But there's something about this that's kind of had you a little bit stuck. And I really do feel like the key here is acceptance of the change. Let it be what it's going to be. And whether you invest in it or whether you don't, the work here has actually all been in you. So I'm going to go over to Vimeo now and do the extended. If you would like to join me, you're very, very welcome. The extended will also be on Circle, so you could also join me over there if that's what you want to do. If not, no shade, it's entirely up to you. Just know that the struggle isn't without point and isn't without purpose. Like, there's something really profound happening in here for you, Gemini. And surrender is the word that I want to use, even though the Hanged Man is in reverse. I mean, that is the act of surrender. This is getting down off the fucking tree, as it were. But I think it's the act of surrendering to the process that is actually seeing you be able to now move on from the process, if that makes sense. So I'm going to leave it there. Know that I love you all very, very much, and I'll see you soon.